I know the title is a bit on the nose, especially because it's derived directly from the episode's title, but what can I say? A lot of the themes of the messaging we are getting from the show is a bit on the nose. And I've grown to really appreciate it. Murderbot episode 7 saw the Preservation Ox team and Murderbot on the run from the group that Labibi works for. But things aren't so rosy because most of them still haven't gotten over the very violent, but I think very satisfying way that Murderbot saved their lives and spared us all from Labibi of the cannot keep her hands to herself fame. They are, in Murderbot and my personal opinion, a tad bit ungrateful. And I totally understand why it was feeling very frustrated. But what I thought as I watched the episode and how it ends up playing out is that these two are on opposite sides in their ideology, their thinking and their way of resolving the conflict of someone pulls a gun on you, how's the best way to resolve it? Murderbot's response to it, like I would respond in that situation, is blow their brains out. The Preservation Ox team's response is let's talk it out. And while these are two very opposing, drastically opposing sides to take, what the show is already subtly communicating to us is that finding a middle ground, a way to best integrate our opposing differences, is the only way any of us is surviving. And considering the present state of the world, I kind of understand why. Now, sincere apologies to those of you who were waiting for me to drop this video much earlier. As I'm sure you've probably seen with the videos I dropped Monday through Wednesday, it's been quite the busy week for me so far. So many shows and characters to explore and so little time. But I had a clear goal that this had to go up latest today, since tomorrow is a brand new Murderbot episode and your girl is going to be seated rooting for my favorite security unit. And if you're a recent subscriber or visitor to the channel and have no idea what Murderbot is, it's a new science fiction show on Apple TV based off of a series of books about this part organic, mostly synthetic security mech unit that calls itself Murderbot. It's found a way to override its governor's module, meaning that it's granted itself sentience and can think for itself. And what does it use this newly found freedom to do, you might ask? Well, it spends it watching its favorite show, Sanctuary Moon, which also means that it's often upset at the humans and just the role it has to fulfill that pulls it away from the valuable time it would rather spend watching its favorite show. Can you all tell why Murderbot is my absolute favorite character in this series? If you haven't started the show yet, do get on it. It is only 10 episodes this season and tomorrow's episode is episode 8. So we're coming quite quickly to the end of the first season. And we need it to be renewed. So please check it out on Apple TV. Thank you. Oh, and this isn't a sponsored video, by the way, before anyone thinks that the reason why I keep yapping about the platform is because I was sponsored by them. I'm not. Not yet, at least. Apple, call me. Not maybe, like call me. Call me. But back to the episode and the show leaning further into this story being a commentary of our present existence. I already mentioned it in the video I made last week about how much of an anomaly the Preservation Ox crew is and why that matters to us in our present society, as we need scientists and our technological experts to start looking at their discovery and their work through less of a capitalist lens and more humanist and community based, where their work is to help humanity instead of merely selling us out and trying to find a way to exploit us to serve their own needs and for the sake of science. Like I mentioned in that video, I felt that the Preservation Ox team was to be held up as a mirror for our society to remind us that science and technology are meant to help us as a people and not annihilate and imprison us, as is being done by the Corporation Rim folks in the show and by corporations in real life. The show and the story of Murderbot itself via the books is one that raises very relevant questions and tries to offer a suggestion with regards an alternative way we can consider living and coexisting. A different way from the life we live at the moment, and I think that Complementary Species as an episode does this even more. Because at the heart of Complementary Species is a question of our differences and how we all factor into our own survival. The show is trying to subtly point us to a realization that no matter how vastly different these characters might be, their differences are what is going to help them survive and make it through this expedition that they are stranded on. And I don't know about my fellow book readers, but for me, it is a significant change from the books that I really appreciate because of what that change is having us consider. What do I mean by that? Well, in the books, and for those who are worried, please don't worry. I am not going to spoil it for you. But in the books, the entire premise of how the Preservation Ox team survives rests on the actions of just three characters. Murderbot, of course, Gurathin, as expected, and Dr. Mensa, because who else? The show, however, subtly points us into seeing how all of the characters factor into their survival. But before we narrow things down, let's look at it on a more broad scale. The complementary species at first glance would refer to the Preservation Ox team and what they stand for, a mostly organic species that would choose peace as a way for survival and believe that a more communal way of living is the best way to do so, i.e., nobody is going to be left behind, the only way we make it through is together. On the other hand, we have Murderbot, our cyborg security unit who believes that force and being prepared and security ready is the only way they are surviving long enough for help to come. And part of that is for it to weigh what actions and factors and peoples can be saved or should be eliminated or discarded to make their chances of survival higher. As I'm sure you can already guess, this creates a big divide and is what adds immensely to the distrust that a lot of the Preservation Ox team have with Murderbot. One, because it so unerringly blew apart Lebibi's head the minute it saw her as a threat. And two, because it was willing to consider having Gurathin die so as to ensure that the rest of the team survives. And we see that this is the point that Mensa disagrees with. Because there is absolutely no way they are not going back to the habitat. They need to. Gura needs the med bay to heal, and that is where their difference shines the brightest. Because whilst Mensa can convince herself that Murderbot did what it had to protect them by killing Lebibi, she cannot convince herself that Murderbot is doing what it has to do to protect them by suggesting they let Gurathin die. Because that is in direct opposition to what her side stands for. Remember, they are very communal and no one is getting left behind. Even if Murderbot would not shed a tear at Gura's passing. And so therefore, her insistence on them returning back to save Gura and bringing Murderbot along would be a great way to emphasize the lessons of complementary species coming together and having their strengths align in a way to ensure their survival that is at the heart of the episode. Because I don't think it's an accident that the episode featured the large centipede-like creature saving the team when ideally one would expect that it would cause them harm. I mean, the first episode had one of those creatures attack Bharadwaj and almost eat her. The team and the centipede creatures are as vastly different as possible, and yet, when the superior security unit that had been messing with and jamming Murderbot's threat assessment module suddenly dropped in and started to kick its ass, it was the Preservation Ox team coming together to try and save it, even though, like Murderbot fondly thinks, they were making things so much worse that Quasi came to the rescue. But it was the other security unit deciding to destroy the eggs left behind by the centipede creatures that had mated above the hopper, and the only reason why said egg sacs had been left untouched so far was because Arada, whose interest has always been on studying alien life forms, found it beautiful and didn't want the rest of the team messing with the eggs. But as I was saying, the other security unit destroying the egg sacs is what brought the centipede creature bursting out of the ground and chomping down on its head, effectively killing the unit that was clearly superior to Murderbot and would have most likely wiped the entire team out. That scene highlighted the role that Arada played in their survival. It was her insistence on them not touching the eggs that ensured that they were not the ones killed. That Murderbot played to stall for time, because if it wasn't there, the other Murderbot would have killed the team. And finally, the centipede creature that munched on the unit that destroyed a large portion of its eggs. I think having that happen just before Gura collapses and Mensah and the rest of the team realize that they need to get him to a medical base soon or he would die was to emphasize that them returning back to their habitat is them heading straight to their death, like Murderbot warned. But that there is a way for them all to survive, and that is for them to rely on their strengths and what they each bring to the table to ensure that not only is Gura saved, but they all live through it. Which for me is where the slight differences they made with the show shines. We've already seen that Arada's choice to save the eggs because her research interest has always centered on other species is something that unwittingly helps save them and comes to their aid when they would have otherwise been killed. It would be interesting to see where Pinli, Rafi, Bharadwaj, and even Mensah to some extent also come in, including Gurathin as well. Because Murderbot being the only security unit on their team, I think it's already given the role it would get to play. Of course, the only way that this would be accomplished, though, is for them all to work together, which is what I felt necessitated the events of the episode, particularly the last 15 minutes. Because the show needs the characters to all come to that realization. Murderbot knows that the Preservation Ox team would never abandon their own, but has brought itself to the point where it feels inclined to protect them regardless of them ignoring him. And the Preservation Ox team knows that Murderbot would always prioritize their safety, which means that they might not approve of some of its choices, but they would have to live with it if they intend to live through whatever is waiting for them at the habitat, all to save Gura. And I don't know about you, but I am quite eager to see how this entire story plays out and rooting for everyone to survive at the end, of course. Like, I have not read the books and know how it ends. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours as well. So do drop them in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share it if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.